Hello, New Zealand. I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is episode number 72. Tonight we discuss Christopher Luxon's worshipping in India. WWJVF. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's Who Would Jesus Vote For? The newspaper cartoonists take a crack at Jesus, but not Mohammed. Is it fair game? And Trump sacks the Department of Education in the US. Should New Zealand do the same? Let's meet our incredible panel for tonight. A handsome lot they are. Elliot, I'm never sure where you are because you seem to be travelling all over the country. You in the south side tonight?
I am south side. I'm South Auckland and I'm at my home. So love it. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Bob.
Elliot Ikele, to your left is Ashley Church in the Esk Valley. How are you, Ashley?
I'm good. I'm just impressed that there's 72 episodes and you haven't been banned yet or cancelled.
We got cancelled in the third episode, so it's right. All, getting cancelled is like going through puberty. You're scared of it, but once you get through it, it's awesome. So, it's just great. Up north, out by Dargaville, I think it is now. Mel Taylor, how are you, Mel?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
Very good. Still got that beautiful chair that, did Jim, your husband, actually design that? Did he make it?
No, but I did buy it for him as a gift. It's just, I need to sit in it once in a while just to remind him the quality and stuff like that.
Sitting on the throne. Well,
yes,
not that
definitely.
Throne. Okay. And staying in the south side is Susie Miller. How are you, Susie?
I'm good. Hi from the mighty Manurewa.
Now, I realise that today is just over 2 years since our very first show of Straight Talk. Funny you said that, Ashley, and I just want to show you the very first clip of Straight Talk and see who's still on the panel. Hi, I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. He's a lot younger. Show where the panelists are unashamedly and unapologetically social conservatives. Here we go. And, let's put them up as the Brady Bunch. Look at that. What an intelligent-looking family that lot is.
Oh,
Look at that lot. Okay, there we go. So who do we have? Alfred, Bruce, Christine, Ashley. You look got a lot more hair there, Ashley.
Thank you.
Who's that guy? That's Ronji Tanielu, isn't he? Looking handsome as ever. Okay, well, that was the first show, and it was just over 2 years ago. So, yeah, we have lasted that long, Ashley. Okay, image of the week this week is this one, and it's because Friday was World Down Syndrome Day, and I went on social media to ask for a list of all the schools in New Zealand that acknowledged the day with a special flag on the flagpole, coloured shirts, special assembly, fundraising bake sale. Oh, and also for examples of media coverage from One News, Breakfast, 7 Sharp, Stuff, New Zealand Herald, News Talk ZB. And I simply asked all the people on social media, did your school acknowledge this special day? Well, interestingly enough, I could count on 2 hands actually, but here's a list. Tatahi Bay School has done it. Royal Oak Primary, Mount Primary School did a Crazy Socks Day. Wairarapa College did a Crazy Socks Day. All the schools in Methven did it. Methven Primary School, Lauriston Primary School, Methven Preschool, Leaperhead Preschool and Mount Hutt College, St. Joseph's Catholic Primary in New Plymouth and Middleton Grange and Christchurch and St. Francis de Sales, is it? Or de Sales? Oh, anyway, someone will know. And the Warriors apparently acknowledged it, although I don't think there's a Down syndrome round like the Pride round. But my point was simply this. We have whole weeks and days and months dedicated to Pride and LGBT, but unfortunately Down syndrome kids don't have a cross-party parliamentary network, a special room in Parliament or a curriculum in the schools. There's no down tick or down pledge. It's not quite sexy enough. It's not a cult or an agenda, is it? And unfortunately that tells you everything. Our video of the week. Team, I want you to judge which Green scares you the most. Here's the first Green MP. And have a listen to what she's up to. So this is Tamitha Paul, and this is telling you what she's doing for the day.
Christchurch, where I'm visiting Christchurch Men's Prison and then doing an event at University of Canterbury with Peace Action Ōtautahi to talk about the police and what alternatives we could have to the police and what radical kind of police abolition could look like in real terms.
Yeah, okay, so she wants to defund the police, so there's nominee number 1. Nominee number 2 is Green MP Benjamin Doyle, who was talking about puberty blockers on Sunday.
Interventions like puberty blockers and HRT are crucial to the well-being of the general population, trans and cisgender people alike. We know that access to surgery, therapy, mental health support and education for rainbow people is life-saving and therefore must be prioritised. That's why the Greens will increase funding for trans, reproductive and gender-affirming healthcare, decrease wait times for surgery, strengthen workforce development and capability and address discrimination in the healthcare system.
Yes, forget the hip operations and the cancer cures. There's nothing better than chemically castrating vulnerable kids. So which Green scares you more? Elliot, which one? Is it Benjamin Doyle or Tamitha Paul?
Benjamin Doyle. The other one's quite a nut job, but Benjamin Doyle, including his little scat play that he seems to like writing about where you eat feces while you're engaged in sexual activity. He's quite dangerous, I think, to the children. The other one, Tamitha Paul, she doesn't actually know much of what she's talking about half the time, and she's just doing the thing which is alongside that guy who's the Auckland criminologist. It's part of that whole HIPAA thing or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay, and if you're wondering what the heck Elliot is talking about, he's talking about the AIDS Foundation, which is now the Burnett Foundation, and what he said is correct, sadly. Ashley, which one worries you more, Benjamin Doyle's ideology or Tamitha Paul?
Well, of course, that's probably a tie, but even worrying implies that there's some sort of threat to us. And seriously, I mean, these guys are such fruitcakes, and their chances of getting into some sort of coalition where they're going to have any power and ability to implement any of this nonsense is so remote that the people who voted for them at the last election will be drawing pension by that time, hopefully, and the kids that they're currently trying to pervert with their ideology will be voting age. So I'm not particularly concerned about either of them.
Okay.
I think they'll be long gone.
I hope you're right. Mel, you'll be a lot kinder. Which one would you prefer?
Neither, none of them, none of the Greens whatsoever. It bewilders me that people in our country have actually backed them to the point that they're even in government. The whole lot scare me.
Okay, and Susie, I'm sure you'll have a pastoral response. Which one, would you love to have dinner with?
Oh, I'd have dinner with either of them, but they don't scare me as much as they annoy me. I would probably I just can't wait till next year, and hopefully we get a lot less Greens in Parliament. I'm hoping that everyone's awake to their tactics and just their rhetoric, which is just so ignorant. So hopefully we've got.
I thought you always told your kids they had to have their Greens.
Ice cream.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into. Sorry, that was a slight distraction, but those two videos did really amuse me. Anyway, let's get into our first topic, and the topic is basically Christopher Luxon during the week. I think it was the topic of many sermons yesterday in church. When he did this, let me show you. And the question is: was he being polite? Was he simply politicking, or is he apostate? Let's have a look. So this is in India.
We welcome Right Honourable Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. Christopher Luxon, accompanied by our Honourable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji. दोनों प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने अभी शीश झुका के गुरु.
Okay, so is he respecting the culture? Is he doing as you would as a guest? Is he simply accommodating different cultures that have come to New Zealand? Or is he betraying himself? Just before I come to you, Elliot, first, let me just remind you of what Luxon said in his maiden speech back in 2021.
Now, Mr. Speaker, it seems it has become acceptable to stereotype those who have a Christian faith in public life as being extreme. So I will say a little about my Christian faith. It has anchored me, given my life purpose and shaped my values, and it puts me in the context of something bigger than myself. My faith has a strong influence on who I am and how I relate to people. I see Jesus showing compassion, tolerance and care for others. He doesn't judge, discriminate or reject people. He loves unconditionally. And through history, we've seen Christians making a huge difference by entering public life. Christian abolitionists fought against slavery. Others educated the poor and challenged the rich to share their wealth and help others less fortunate. The world is a better place for Christians like William Wilberforce, Martin Luther King and Kate Shepherd contributing to public life. My faith is personal to me. It is not in itself a political agenda. I believe that no religion should dictate to the state, and no politician should use the political platform they have to force their beliefs on others. As MPs, we serve the common cause of all New Zealanders, not one religion, not one group, not one interest. A person should not be elected because of their faith, and nor should they be rejected because of it.
Okay, so, I mean, is he simply being polite? And should he have done this? Is he just showing respect for the people who are hosting him? Elliot, what do you say?
Well, he is, and he is politicking. Of course he is, but he's doing so at the utter expense of the public declaration of Jesus Christ, our Lord. He actually, your video there when he was talking about his Christianity, he's actually gone against what he said. He has gone totally against it. When he was saying about William Wilberforce and Kate Shepherd and how he does not, when he said that it does not really lead his politics. Well, I'm sorry, William Wilberforce and Kate Shepherd absolutely were led politically by their Christian faith. They stood up and they defended it, and they used their Christian faith as what made them push into that political environment. William Wilberforce, the abolition of enslavement, Christian, directly Christian. The idea of giving women the vote came from a Christian place. He is not just Laodicean as far as I'm concerned. I think that every Christian who voted in Luxon due to his Christianity needs to take a good, strong look at themselves in the mirror, because what he did was sell out his Christianity publicly. I don't care about what's going on internally. I don't care. The idea is that if you are a Christian, stand up and be proud. Don't be a simpering fool about it.
Well, Ashley, is he, I mean, did people vote him in as a Christian, or did they vote him in as a head of state, and therefore he's acting as a head of state might?
Oh, bit of both. But I guess for me, there's a couple of moving parts to this. So the first of them is that, I mean, I spent a big chunk of my life compromising on my faith and compromising on what I thought was acceptable and doing one thing in public and another thing behind closed doors. So I'm the last person who's going to judge him on his personal faith and where he's at. And there's a big chunk of my life where I probably would have agreed with him that there's no place for Christianity in politics and that it should be a private matter. I've changed that view quite substantially over the last few years. In respect of this particular event, though, because he's put it out there, he's the one who in his maiden speech has actually put his Christianity on the line and said, I'm a Christian. So he's put it out there for public debate. In respect of this particular event in India, where he's essentially worshipped a false god, there's plenty of precedent for that in Scripture if he's really a man of God. I mean, he's only got to go to the book of Daniel, where twice, firstly with Daniel's friends Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, who were put into a furnace for not being prepared to bow down to somebody else's God, and then Daniel himself, who was put in a den of lions for the same reason. He wasn't prepared to bow down to a foreign god. So on that basis alone, you know, I think if he's going to draw his faith as a basis for his leadership, then he has to also put himself into the shoes of the God who he purports to represent and actually do the things he's called on. One last point: when he talks about Jesus being a God of tolerance and a God who's non-judgmental and, you know, open to, that's nonsense. That's a false gospel from the pit of hell. And it's one of these things that I get tired of hearing from people who talk about how, you know, Christ would be tolerant of some of the things that this government and previous governments have been into, when in fact Scripture says something very, very different. So again, if he's going to hold his faith up, then he needs to be prepared to actually represent that faith honestly.
All right, Susie, would you say that he's just acted politely, perhaps as a Christian would, respecting his hosts, or has he compromised?
I see major compromise. That's probably all I see. My reaction was, are you kidding me? I think I tweeted
yes, you did.
straight away. I just said, this is something you don't need to do to win friends. I'm extremely uncomfortable with our head of state because in my view, he represents us. And as far as I knew, we were still a predominantly Christian religion. Like that's still Christianity, still our dominant religion. And, you know, what part of Deuteronomy 6:14 is unclear? Do not follow other gods, for the Lord your God is a jealous God. So whipping your shoes off, and just bowing the knee. Like, that's such a sacred act to me. I bow the knee only to God. And like Ashley's spoken of Daniel, like that was something he just drew the line. And Chris needed to draw the line. Like, you can go over there and politely engage, but especially with who he worshipped with, like that's Prime Minister Modi. And my husband said this thought, and it's so jarring. Like, what about the persecuted Indian Christians who are being imprisoned, who are being killed? In the last 5 years, there've been hundreds killed, thousands imprisoned under the anti-conversion laws in India. And that guy, Prime Minister Modi, is, right behind all of that. And that's so upsetting for every Indian Christian who's like, oh, this guy's from the West, from a democracy, from a, Christian nation, for him to be just out there endorsing their bully, their oppressor. That's truly sad. And I'm sad for them, and I'm sad for us.
Amen.
Okay, Mel, what do you think?
I was going to use Deuteronomy as well, so yeah, all good. But he's proving himself to be a wishy-washy leader with no real stance on anything. I mean, you're talking about your beliefs, in his maiden speech, his beliefs, Christianity, and then he goes and contradicts it all, and he's not standing by his words. There would have been nothing wrong with going and saying, listen, I'm a Christian, so I'm happy to just stand back and you do your thing. As I imagine, had the Indians been over here in New Zealand, I can't really see them participating in a major Christian worshipping event, So it's sad. It's another bit of evidence that shows that he's not standing by his word. And he's not even backing himself to say, this is who I am, and then to go and do something completely different. He's totally not backing himself. And I imagine there were a lot of people, conservatives and Christians, that voted for National, and he gave the pretense of being a Christian. What's this showing? It's actually really sad.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I did post, is that I think if you are hosting a head of state from another religion, whether it was Muslim or Hindi or Sikh or whatever, that you wouldn't then take them to an evangelical service, expect them to raise their hand and worship, to give some money during the offering and to go up for communion. You simply wouldn't put that expectation on them, because it would compromise them. But how far, Ashley, let me come to you. I mean, Jacinda Ardern turned up to the mosque, remember, wearing the headscarf. Is this just is he just done similar in just showing respect?
Yeah, there's a difference though. The difference is that Jacinda Ardern, as far as I could tell, was a godless heathen who had no sense of hey, maybe not, but that was the impression I got. Who had no sense of faith and didn't understand any aspect of Christianity, and therefore, not surprised that she would wear the Islamic dress or any of those. But Luxon, in his maiden speech, not just in a speech, in his maiden speech, the initial speech that he gave in Parliament, put on the line and identified that he was a Christian. So I hold him to a much, much higher standard.
Okay, and Elliot, do you think? Oh, go on.
How weak does that make us look as a country when your own leader is, with other leaders is like, oh yeah, I had my faith, but no, I'll go along with yours. It's a bit of what are they thinking? Like, oh my gosh, what a wishy-washy guy. We wouldn't do that in their country.
No.
Yeah. So if you're being polite, Susie, how far would you go? I mean, you're in India, you're with a different religion, you're there as a born again Christian. You're not going to compromise your faith. So how polite are you in that setting?
Well, I think Paul says not to eat food offered to idols. I think there's a precedence for, like, if they know that you're a Christian, they're watching your every move, right? So you've got to understand, like, I was concerned that Chris didn't have a check in his heart and spirit, like, oh, actually the optics of this is pretty bad, right? Like considering what I have said about myself. So what would I do? It would be all about the context. I would be asking the Holy Spirit, what can I do? But because I've had many invitations to go to temples, to go to different places. I've said, oh no, I'm good. But yeah, so I don't. It would be within the context. I would definitely be asking God, like, what can I do? What can't I do? So I couldn't answer that definitively unless I was actually in the situation, but I would never do that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Elliot, do you have any idea of how we could have handled it?
Well,
that would have been
acceptable.
acceptable.
Say, contextualization of language, but you say, "No, mate, all good. I respect you, but my deep faith I respect your deep faith in Hinduism. I am a Christian. This is how we operate. We don't do this." But I want to make sure that I'm not being offensive. So please tell me how I can work it through without having to compromise my own faith. I also want to bring out, Bob, that Mark Mitchell and Chris Luxon sat side by side, giving a strong reverential message about Ramadan on screen. And what happened, and then I think for Easter, no, Lent had a little post, and we don't even know if he wrote it or not. So I found that a continuance of a disgraceful imbalance that mocks Christianity. I mean, I'll be surprised if he even talks about Jesus on Easter. I'll be still expecting the old normal spin of Easter bunnies and Easter eggs.
Okay, lots of comment coming through, so let's just quickly go through it. There we go. That was something from a previous show. Hang on. Mike says, oh man, is he doing a Trudeau? Well, Trudeau's gone now, so yeah. Liao says, what an accommodating PM we have, lol. Simply Green says, is he respecting our culture? Jacob makes a very good point. Elliot representing the Greens tonight with his green shirt. Now, Neil makes the point you made, Elliot. I look forward to Mr. Luxon celebrating Easter in public. There may be a few eyes on Christopher Luxon this Easter. I might warn him. Kirstine says the Indians would have seen that and questioned his integrity. They aren't stupid. Manjanji is listening from Nairobi, Kenya. Wow. Well, I don't know the greeting in Kenyan, but nice to have you on board. Simply Green says, what would Luxon do for Kim Jong? Or is this different? Rosie says he was just respecting his host. Darwin thinks you're spot on, Ashley. So there we go. You got one fan. I'll remember that one. Derek Kiwi says, just try to hold a Christian service in their spaces. Well, that's the point you were making, Susie. And so Neil says, spot on, Susie. Kevin says, Christopher acknowledged Christ and so be it, but I would not have done it. I was in a Buddhist environment whilst in China and was able to draw the line. And Viv says, another nail in Luxon's coffin. Maybe. All right. Well, we're on a bit of a theme, and our next topic is WWJVF. You thought it was WWJD, but it's WWJVF. Who would Jesus vote for? And David Seymour was announcing that he was going to put candidates into the local body elections, and he said, quote, never say never, but I just make the point we are looking for people to stand in councils. And then for some dumb reason, he invokes Jesus and he says, if Jesus comes back and says, I want to stand for Auckland for Mayor of Wellington, we might say, buddy, with that hair and beard, how could we not endorse you? Sense of humour, maybe. By the way, the ACT Party is not going to bring back Jesus. That was clearly a joke. And then he was asked, well, would Jesus vote for ACT? Have a watch.
Do I reckon Jesus would support it? You know what? I believe that Jesus very well might support ACT. From what I know about him, he believed that Jesus believed that each person had inherent dignity, was made in the image of God, Imago Dei, and deserved to be treated with universal human rights. In many respects, the underlying teachings of Jesus and the ACT Party overlap, but I just want to be clear, the ACT Party is not promising to disinter Guy Fawkes, Jesus, or any historical figure to stand for mayor, council, or any other position. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think the siren was probably the best part of that interview, but then some hand-picked church leaders responded. Christian leaders have dismissed David Seymour's joke that Jesus might vote ACT as beyond his expertise. They emphasised Jesus' focus on community and caring for the marginalised over politics. It was part of his earlier run-in with some church leaders over Acts Treaty Principle Bill. A couple of the quotes before I come to you, Susie. One said, David is not a theologian, he's a politician. Well, we all know that. This other church leader said she wouldn't comment on whether Jesus would vote for ACT, but he would definitely vote for action. Nice play on words. Another one said Seymour's characterisation of Jesus going around speaking an apolitical message about the universal equal rights of all people wasn't the full picture. Jesus wasn't killed for suggesting equal human rights, he was killed for who he ate with. And lastly, one of them said Seymour's reference to Imago Dei starts to explain what Jesus is like, but ignores that he is ultimately about outcomes, not just a standardised approach. Right. Susie, who would Jesus vote for? Why did Luxon get in? Seymour get into this? And how would you have answered the question?
Well, first of all, I got to say it's a great question, and I think every New Zealander should be asking that question, especially next year. But yeah, also, what a crazy laugh. That guy has a crazy laugh. I never noticed that.
That was embarrassing, eh?
Maniacal, I think is the word.
That was the kind of laugh that someone does when they think the joke fell flat, so they try to compensate.
Crazy. But yes, way outside of his expertise, Jesus, valued love and faith and forgiveness. They're probably the top three things that encompass most of his preaching. And that's love for God, faith and trust in God for everything, and forgiveness for all. And, I don't know that any political parties reflect these values completely. The Greens and Te Pāti, Māori, they often promote division and revenge, and David Seymour lacks love. You can see that through all the things he does, and he fosters division. National and Labour, their gods are money and government. And Winston Peters values Judeo-Christian roots, yes, but opposes Israel's right to defend itself. So I don't know if Jesus would vote for any of them. He'd heal the humble, and if they humbled themselves, they would receive all the grace and mercy that Jesus gives. And, this is what I would say about our leaders is they're both insecure and proud. And James 4:8 says, come near to God and he will come near to you. Humble yourselves before the Lord and he will lift you up. So, yeah, but like I said, it's a good question, and we should all be asking ourselves that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm stealing your thunder, Mel, but he talked about Imago Dei.
To be mocked, the whole thing was a mockery. It was actually disgusting, and obviously they don't know a lot about the Bible or about God or about Jesus. To be even applying such a thing, it does my head in.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I'm interested that there's no mention about the truth around the unborn child, about being created male and female, and opposing gender. I mean, remember that our whole parliament voted to allow birth certificates to be changed, so you can just choose your gender on your birth certificate. So it just shows how far the truth of Scripture is not being fully influential in Parliament. Ashley, what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, so firstly, I'm glad he did this, and I hope that clip is replayed and replayed and replayed at next year's election, because I actually talk to Christian friends who talk about the possibility of voting for ACT because they see it as a party that stands up for moral principles. Seriously, put aside their economic. Yeah. Put aside their economic stuff, which is pretty sound. Pretty much the rest of their policy is fruitcake territory. And their moral compass is non-existent. So we need exposure to this guy, and that sort of mockery of Jesus Christ needs to be replayed and replayed so that Christians get the message that this is not a reasonable place to put your vote. But with regard to the bigger question, Bob, we're kind of missing the whole point here, and that is that it's not a case of if Christ comes back, he is coming back, and when he comes back, democracy's over. He's not going to be coming to stand an election somewhere. He's coming back as king, and he's taken over the whole world, and he's going to rule it from that point onward. So he wouldn't be voting for any of these clowns. He's taking over himself, and he'll run government perfectly in a way that has never happened in history.
Yep, well done. Elliot?
Yeah, David was doing what David does. He's very clever. He likes to be able to switch back and forth and get other people. He's got a bit of a thin skin, interestingly enough, for someone who likes to give it. But he was just doing what he does. So I'm not really surprised at what he said. I don't really take much offense at it because he is absolutely outside that consideration. I would say, of course, no, Jesus would not vote for ACT because, as many of us have already brought up, Jesus is quite supportive of protecting babies in the womb, and he is also not very supportive of committing suicide. And these are things which ACT do try to push as things to decide on. I think that Ashley is quite right. When Jesus comes back, really what we need to be thinking of is, what should I, as a Christian, as someone who purports to be Christian, who should I be putting my vote into? Who should I be supporting? And I'm shocked a little bit about some of Ashley's mates who are Christians saying, yeah, I might go for ACT. I think that's nearing insanity, or I don't want to say apostasy, but if you're a Christian, I'm sorry, there are some parties who exclude themselves from even the possibility of voting for, and ACT is one of them.
Yeah. Okay, Eva just says, quick note, are you breaking up a wee bit or is it my iPad? Eva, do not adjust that dial. It was just Mel was having a few internet problems where she was. So, Ashley, I think you actually already answered this question. My question was, how would you have responded if the media had rang you and said, Ashley, I mean, I wasn't quite sure that the church leaders should even have responded to this because it was quite clearly mockery. Seymour is not a theologian. He hadn't thought this through. He threw a few statements in. Should church leaders have even responded in that situation?
No, they shouldn't. And I would have given the answer I just gave, and therefore it wouldn't have been printed. So,
Yeah.
because it didn't have been printed. So, what's in fact? It would have been included. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, church leaders need to show a little bit of wisdom in this stuff. And the wisdom is to take the opportunity whenever it's given to them to actually follow a narrative around Jesus Christ, not to be falling into this trap of, one-upmanship over who Jesus may or may not have voted for in a fictitious environment.
Yeah. Susie, how do you respond? I mean, if someone says, okay, who would Jesus vote for? I mean, next year, election's coming up. Who would Jesus vote for? It's a bit of a loaded question. I mean, is it a relevant question?
Obviously, it's a fictitious scenario, like you say, but it's what would Jesus do is something that we ask ourselves in everyday life. So how would Jesus vote? How do I vote? I vote morally. I vote for a person or a party who represents my moral values. And so they are to be found.
Yeah.
And that's how I voted last year. And I hope that those people will be represented so that I can vote for them again this next round.
And you'd vote for someone who knows what a woman is as well, wouldn't you, Susie? Mel, we still got you there. Yeah, we have. How would you have responded if the media had rang you and said, okay, well, who would Jesus vote for?
Firstly, I would say I don't really recognise mainstream media. I do recognise Family First and the Daily Examiner and other independent media outlets.
You just got cancelled, buddy.
Yeah. You're being quoted.
Which point I imagine they wouldn't really want to know anything else. So
Yeah.
sort of null and void.
Okay. Elliot, should the church leaders have responded or should they have realised that it was just pure tongue-in-cheek, dumb statement from David Seymour?
It was a dumb statement. They just look dumb when they respond to things like that. If anything, they need a backbone and start talking about the bigger issues such as abortion and euthanasia, things of that nature.
Good luck.
Okay, right. Let's keep moving. Let's go on to topic number 3. And there was this advert in the newspapers last week on the back of this whole debacle, and slightly disrespectful because it talks about the fact that maybe Jesus could break off a few pieces of bread from that body of yours. So deliberately mocking communion. Now, I did actually just post put a post out and I said, hey, Stuff, who published it, how about Islam now? Do a cartoon about Islam, I dare you. Now, some people actually sent that complaint to the Stuff newspapers, and their response was, and I just need my number for that. Is it 11?
Hi.
No, No, it's that one. Re-cartoons about Mohammed. There is a well-known case of a French magazine, Charlie Hebdo, publishing a number of these, which led to the murder of a number of journalists and others by Islamic extremists.
Isn't that telling?
Yeah. They're saying they're scared. They're saying they're scared of them, but they're not scared of Christians. That's what they're saying.
Well, it's also a slight on the Muslim community in New Zealand that they think the Muslim community are going to react like that. See, the other interesting thing is that this cartoon was in the wider Rapper Times age. Now, that's Masterton, where all the church arsons have been, and the arsonist has still not been found, and they still can't call it a hate crime because I don't really think it is, because it's against Christian churches, but it's a sensitive issue. And yet here they are mocking Christianity, but they're showing respect to Islam. I think, they should show respect to both, actually. But Elliot, what's your thought on this? I mean, do Christians just have to learn to take it? I mean, blessed are they that are persecuted.
Well, Christians won't. Christians tend to be quite weak in New Zealand. We still have a very tofu-like structure within the New Zealand church. In terms of we do need to actually, to be fair, some of the stuff we need to be able to handle it. We've got to handle the jandal because these will come, and I think as part of the Christian faith to be able to handle some of this stuff, so that we'll pick and choose our battles. I will say that drawing style you've shown is very reminiscent of that. I recall. I'm pretty sure I know who this artist is, and he is someone who absolutely has a bit of a hatred, very much a bigoted feeling towards anyone who is conservative, especially Christian. So they very much picked someone who does not like Christians, does not like conservatives either. This is someone who's very well known of making mockery caricatures of different people. But as Christians, take it on the chin, man. We've got bigger fights. The thing is, we don't take on the bigger fights. So this sort of stuff, don't worry about it. The other big fights, we need to stand up.
Mel, the interesting thing is that the media didn't go off to the church leaders again the following day to ask them about this insulting cartoon, which I thought was kind of interesting. So
it just shows they're not following their own DEIs with their inclusive of all, which is, but it just shows how biased the media is. It shows that they're not respecting all religions, all cultures, all beliefs, that they will justify it while putting down a religion. It's really sad.
Okay, Susie, I know you're not one for taking it on the chin, but do we need to take these on the chin?
There's a case for, again, just letting that stuff go. And I agree, there are bigger hills to die on, but I do like what you did, Bob. I liked that you sort of got a response from the media, and again, they just showed their true colours. I think everybody who's truly seeking a faith to believe in, has to look at how Christians are treated globally and ask themselves, why are they always picked on? Why are they always mocked? Why are they always persecuted? And if they ask Christians, or if they ask God, they'll get the truth. They'll get a truly seeking heart will see this is evidence of the truth behind our faith, the truth behind our Christianity. There's a glory that the world hates, and the world just wants to suppress and just wants to dismiss, and they can't handle God's way of living. But it's kind of obvious the way we're treated in media, in all areas of life. So hopefully people can see the obvious way that we are maligned and treated. And I'm
so
proud.
Ashley,
sorry.
Okay, so Ashley, when do we push back?
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking as we were talking, and I pick up on Elliot's point, which I agree with, which is this idea that we, as Kiwis, we're a bit pathetic as Christians, and we don't tend to do things and to complain. But it occurs to me, Bob, particularly given what you've done, there's actually a huge opportunity here, because most Christians have got a social media following. It might only be small, it might only be family. For others, it might be a bit bigger. They might be on Facebook or Instagram or X or LinkedIn, but most of them have got some sort of following. This is a perfect opportunity to take both the original cartoon and the response that you got from the media and to actually do a little post. And it doesn't have to be overly religious, just basically saying, why do you think it is that there is this hypocrisy? Why do you think it is that it's okay to post this and not to post this? And here's the response that we got from the media. This is actually a really powerful witnessing opportunity for those. So for those people that Elliot described before, who don't want to put their head above the parapet because they don't know what they can say and they don't understand where the opportunities to witness are, this is huge. This is a great opportunity. So anybody watching this, get hold of those and do a little post about it. Doesn't have to be overly religious, but it's an opportunity to ask that question and just seed that thought in the minds of people who may not necessarily have thought about it.
So because you know the media so well and you get on with them so well, why didn't the media talk about this? Why wasn't there some natter on, it was social media were discussing it. Why didn't the media pick this up? Is it because it's a media cartoon and they sort of protect their own, or? Oh no, because as Elliot said before, there is a deliberate, relentless and concerted effort to destroy Christianity. And we need to remember that this is not an incidental thing. This is not a media that occasionally picks up on it because it's a quaint topic. This is a media who believes, and this is kind of a backhanded compliment actually to our faith, this is a media who believe that Christianity is dangerous, which it is. Christianity is dangerous because it changes people's hearts and minds, and that they need to do everything that they can to destroy it and to wipe it out of society altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did anybody else want to add to that before I move on? All good? We're all happy? Okay. Now, just before we do we're doing well tonight. Just before I do our final topic, just a little bit of advertisement. We've got our conference coming up in August and we have announced 2 of the speakers. And so let me just quickly introduce them to you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Miriam Grossman. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'd written a book called Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. And I wrote the book after having seen in my private practice hundreds of families dealing with the issue of having a gender confused child or young adult and helping them to navigate that issue. So I discuss this and many other things in my book, and I will be talking about many of those things when I see you again in August.
Hi, I'm Dawn Hawkins from NCOSE, or the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, based in the U.S. I'm looking forward to being with you at the Family Forum 2025 this August, where we'll talk about the connections between all forms of sexual abuse and exploitation, how they overlap, how they fuel one another, and most importantly, how we can stop these harms. We'll talk about the root issue of pornography and demand, how we have to go after the sex buyers if we want to stop sexual harm in the sex industry. We'll also talk about protecting children online and some really incredible momentum happening all around the globe. And I'm looking forward especially to brainstorming on solutions together.
Okay, so there's 2 of our speakers. Dawn Hawkins within NCOSE. They've done some amazing work around the Dirty Dozen, exposing Pornhub and attacking their funding through the credit card companies. So it's a real powerhouse in NCOSE, and Dawn Hawkins is one of the lead of there. And Miriam Grossman, if you've watched Daily Wire's What is a Woman, she was the only doctor on there that was talking common sense. And she actually was here in 2013, so she's coming back after 12 years. So it's going to be nice to have her back. Last time she came, she was talking about how radical our sexuality education in school was. Now this time she's talking about how radical the gender ideology is in schools. So the details are the 28th and 29th, and we're doing something slightly different. The conference actually starts Thursday night. So there's a couple of sessions on Thursday night, and then there's the full day conference on Friday. So more details coming out about that, and you might just meet some of the panelists from Straight Talk as well. Right, let's continue. And look, Ashley really wants me to show a video of Donald Trump tonight because he hasn't seen him for a while. And so our topic is Donald Trump is basically firing the Ministry of Education in the United States. And the question for us tonight is, should we do the same in New Zealand? Let me just firstly show the announcement that Trump made.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. Should I do this?
Now the kids are signing in the background. Watch the kids in the background. Yeah, so they had the kids and they were signing the executive order in the background as well, and then they hold it up as well. It was actually quite funny. Anyway, so that's in the United States. Got me thinking, should we be doing the same in New Zealand? So let me just show you a couple of quick graphs for the benefit of the audience, because I know you panelists have got your views on this. But let's just look at it in context. So New Zealand is the second biggest spender on education. In fact, compared to the OECD, we're second up the top there, behind Norway, ahead of United Kingdom, Colombia, China, United States. In terms of all our spending, it has just been going up and up and up and up on education. So you're saying to yourself, wow, our kids must be super bright. Well, the problem is I then had a look at some of the recent reports, and we had problems with New Zealand's maths. We had a study that found more than half of students still failing Year 8 maths. We found that we got low literacy and numeracy rates, that New Zealand has a problem with mathematics. And the last one I found was that the government was trying to do a standardised school test across the country, and the principals were pushing back because they thought it might be a foreign test coming into the country, whatever that has to do with anything. So that would suggest that, gee, if the Ministry of Education, all they can do is push critical race theory, gender ideology and puberty blockers at our schools, maybe it is time that we sack them as well. Mel, what do you think? Should we get rid of the Ministry of Education in New Zealand?
Sack them. Definitely. I mean, the stuff that's coming through now, we're talking about statistics that show that we're not, that our children aren't accelerating at school, learning math and English and all the core subjects. And everyone's like, why? But we're also bringing into the schools all this confusion and these undeveloped brains. Brains aren't fully developed till mid-20s. And we're bringing in, are you a boy or a girl? This is how you, dare I say it, this is how you masturbate. This is how you do this sexually and that sexually. What on earth that has to do with English, math, science is beyond me. Yet they're pushing it and they're becoming more and more clever at pushing it. I think Rodney Hyde's been speaking out about his 13-year-old daughter being asked if she's been sexually active. I mean, really? They didn't give permission for his daughter to be asked that. We can be concentrating on core subjects, getting better results, stop confusing our children and let them be kids.
Yeah, I know that one of the things Trump said was that he really values the role of teachers, but he feels that the teacher unions are out of control and the department's out of control. And maybe it's the teacher unions that are the problem in New Zealand as well, pushing this ideology. And look, when I saw that schools could hide children transitions behind parents' back and not actually let them know that the child was identifying as another sex at school, and when they would sneak them off for abortions, I knew that you needed to treat schools with a real caution. Susie, I know you're on a school board of a South Auckland school. I mean, would you like to see the Ministry of Education replaced, and what by?
Oh, what by? I'm not sure, but I don't know. Just in my years of talking to principals here, I think they wouldn't be missed. They slow our principals and their management and senior leadership teams down quite a bit. I don't know how many times I've been to NZ Star conferences, and every time there's a curriculum refresh, there's another curriculum refresh, and you know, even with Labor, they were outgoing and they were trying to refresh the whole curriculum, and then they were telling us, "Oh, we've done half of it, and we're still doing more," and they were about to get voted out, and so that's where all the money is going. you quoted that 20 billion per annum is spent on education in New Zealand. And I worked that out. It's like, because I'm good at maths. And that's over 24,000 per student per year in just the primary and secondary school sector.
Yeah, it's up to 20 billion now a year. I think in the latest budget, it's 20 billion a year.
Yeah. $24,000 per student per year should be incredible, like learning outcomes, right? Like, should have given that to me while I was homeschooling my kids. When they were 5, I taught them to read before they went to school, because I knew they were going to be on the back foot if I just sent them when they were 5. That was my theory anyway. And it helped them. They were really, ahead. But having said that, I've talked to principals across the motu, and here in South Auckland, I feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble, because a lot of the principals that I know, they just leave the sexual education alone. And because we have a lot of respect for our community, and our parents don't want that stuff. And so our boards know this, our principals know this. So it's not a huge issue here. That's as far as I know. But yeah, the curriculum itself, I think, is hampered by competent teachers. And, someone I was talking to was telling me that historically things started going south when they lowered the criteria for entry for teachers training college. And so you could get in because they just needed more. I think this was around the late 80s, early 90s. And so
it must have been after 1985, Susie, because I went to teachers training college in 85. So I think the standard dropped after that.
After you. And so, the old adage, like, I'm not good at maths, is kind of like, oh, that's okay. You're good at everything else. That's fine. We've got teachers in front of our kids who struggle with fractions, who struggle with the basics. And, so that's been a big problem since then. And I've seen that again and again. And also, I don't think we have enough professional development groups offering to teach maths in a way that adult learners can learn successfully enough to then teach our kids. So competency obviously goes into confidence, and our kids need more confidence. And so if the teachers don't have that basic confidence, this is why we are struggling. And I think I saw in an article that you said streaming has been done away with. And that, again, is, like Mel was saying, is part of the DEI stuff that we do away with that because we don't want anyone to feel bad. But there's too much of a broad spectrum of learners in front of a teacher. And so it's really hard for them to just narrow in on certain groups and help each group achieve or move to the next level they need to move to in maths and everything else. Yeah. There's a lot of things we could do.
Yeah. Ashley, I mean, is this crown spending? I mean, is that a good thing? We're just putting that into the priority. I mean, prioritizing education. It's just that we're so high up. We're spending so much money and yet we're low.
It's never about money. Money is never the solution. Money's a way of putting a solution in place. It's never the solution itself. Just by the way, just a point that's quite important with regard to the New Zealand system versus the American system. It's the federal education system that Trump's talking getting rid of. So the comparison in the States to what New Zealand's got is the state system, and they're not getting rid of the state system there. They're just getting rid of the federal system. But let me pick up on a couple of points, some of what Susie said, because for me, and this is going to upset some of your viewers, but I think it's important that it's said. So for most of my life, when it's come to wage negotiations with unions, with teachers and with nurses as another example, Kiwis just have this view that's not based on anything, that teachers are worth more and nurses are worth more and we should pay them more. And it's almost a mantra. It's just this idea that teachers are delightful people that are working really, really hard and they should be paid more. And look, I think that was probably true for a big chunk of our history. I don't necessarily think it's true now. I'm not saying they're not working hard, but I think I pick up on Susie's point. I think the competence and the level of professionalism of our teaching profession is lower. And even more importantly than that, the doorway for this stuff in many of the schools in our country is coming through the teachers themselves. The filth that's coming into our schools, the agenda that's being pushed on our kids in our schools is coming from the teachers, and they're getting it, yes, through the curriculum, but they're also getting it from the stuff that they're getting their heads filled with at university. So there is an indoctrination taking place. And the reason I can say that with some confidence is because if it wasn't true, it's the teachers that would be the vanguard pushing this back, and they're not.
Yeah.
It's the teachers who are actually promoting this stuff, who are encouraging it. And if you want to fix the education system, you start by fixing the teachers.
Okay, I'll come to Elliot, but Mel's dying to say something.
Yeah, I am. Thank you. It's also like we've got a local group of mums and grandmothers that have been down to the high school that are trying to get a copy of this sex education that's being taught. The principal, one grandmother went in, the principal went away, and she was told by the principal that he had been advised that she wasn't allowed to take a copy of the curriculum. So the other problem we're having is that the schools, there are a lot of schools that aren't even communicating fully with parents and grandparents and caregivers about what's really going on. We've been trying to get a clear-cut answer from the school as to whether they're registering for Pride Week, and we still haven't had one. So it's also about the lack of trust, because the communication levels are breaking down and the schools aren't being, not all schools, but there are schools that are definitely not being open and honest about what, people's kids are being taught.
Because they don't trust you because you're a parent.
And that's the problem. So, Elliot, does the Department of Education, as Ashley rightly points out, we've basically like an individual state of the United States. So individual states will still have a Ministry of Education. So do we just need a Doge clean out of the Ministry of Education and get rid of all the driftwood that's dragging down all this dodgy curriculum?
Yeah, I think we do. And everyone has said really good things here, and I'm just going to add to it, because you're right. There's been a lowering of quality of teaching staff. There's been an inculcation of uni lecturer to student teacher, and then on to groom children and indoctrinate them. You've got the feeling of the lack of phonetics and the rote learning, things of that nature, where they keep on trying to bring in all these strange new ideas that don't really make sense. MLE, modern learning environments, sticking 100 kids into one class with 3 teachers, now calling them learning coaches. So there's a lot of that part in there as well. There's also the other side of things, and you brought up, and only a few people know this, but I'll say it again. I know you know it, which is I've worked with several different or a few different education institutes, and I have taken young children twice off to the abortion clinic and back again, and that's a shame upon my own name that I've had to resolve between myself and God. But so I can tell you, I can attest to the fact that parents were excluded out of what should rightfully be an area which they should be knowing about. So you've got this area where the education is down, the grooming is being pushed upon children as well as the student teachers, and then you've filled it up because you've spoken about already, which is that sexualized element there. There's the highly sexualized heterosexual, the gender ideology, the LGBTQIA+ plusism, and not only that, you've also got Te Hurihanga Nui, which basically categorizes your children into Tauiwi, Pākehā, or Māori, and then actually puts the knowledge bases on all of those. And even on top of that, they've still got climate alarmism being funneled through the year 9, 10 areas. So Erica Sanford, I think, who is the Minister of Education. I don't know what she's done. She's said all of these magical words. She's stood up there and said some lovely things, but I don't quite get what she's done to improve our children's education. As far as I can see, nothing. And so I do think we need a Doge clean out. We need to get rid of these third-party resource makers who are making it and collecting a lot of money and collecting that and then feeding that into their resources for their sexualized books and programs that they're engaging on. So we need a Doge clean out, but we also need a leader in the Ministry of Education. Now, I do mean a minister who will stand up for the children and the children's education, go off to a place like Singapore, come back, and then just whittle it down and get back to basics.
Okay, one good thing Erica Stanford has done is she's taken her foot off the neck of Bethlehem College, and they've been able to get on with just being a great school. So that's the one positive. Just a couple of comments here. Robert says 20,000 a year. That would mean a new laptop every month per kid. Easy. Rachel says, well, that's how much top private schools cost. So, yeah, it makes you wonder why we're not getting that service. Neil says, David Longy's Tomorrow schools reforms were a disaster, one of many since then, and yet it's not a money problem, as you said, Ashley. GT says, he's right, I'm a teacher in training. My instructors, not all, are ideologues who lean hard left. Nancy Margaret says, we should see outcomes for the money. Kirstine says, start with the universities first. Oh, there we go. Ashley, someone agrees with you, Nancy Margaret. So that's one for tonight. Well done. That's one more than usual. And Craig says they teach rainbow agendas in New Zealand classrooms. I've seen it in class for 6-year-olds in my own work. So, yeah. And yeah. Okay, we are out of time. There we are, right on the dot. This is the first time ever that we have actually gone right to time. So well done, team. You've been very well behaved. For anybody who wants to know, New Zealand, the All Whites are in through to the World Cup. They won 3-0. So there we are. I've been monitoring the score while we've been doing this. So congratulations to the All Whites. Means we get some decent football coverage next year when most people like Ashley don't even know what football is.
Bring on the rugby. Bring on the rugby.
Yeah.
I want to know how a team can be called the All Whites and still get away with it in New Zealand. I mean, where is the critical theory when we need it? Unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway, that's all we've got time for. Thanks for watching. Elliot, Ashley, great job. Mel, Susie, great job. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next Monday night at 8 o'clock. Have a great week.